Part 31. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 313. Well, after 8 games, we have reached the Western Conference Finals. I think you should also know what kind of stage this is. Most of you have played such games in the locker room. Popovich was giving pre-match remarks. Everyone said that the Warriors are a dark horse, and everyone said that the Warriors end here, but in fact, the team that can reach the Western Conference Finals, how can there be any dark horses? The West is not the East, and the team that can reach the Western Conference Finals, it's a strong team. So I hope you can get serious. Popovich paused and continued, of course, I will be serious myself. For example, I made some adjustments to the starting roster for this game. With that said, Popovich began to announce the start of the game: point guard Tony Parker, shooting guard Angzi, small forward Kawhi Leonard, power forward Tim Duncan, and center Thiago Splitter. Angzi was stunned for a moment. He actually entered the starting lineup, so he listened carefully. Since Popovich put himself in the starting lineup, there will definitely be special arrangements in the follow-up. In this game, our offensive play is the same as usual, blocking and cutting tactics, looking for good opportunities. However, with a slight change on the defensive end, we will expand the defensively. Popovich made a gesture of pushing outward, and then continued. Said, Tim, you protect the rim, and Kawhi, you are responsible for the defense, and, especially you, go to the weak side, more defense. In addition, the most important point is that when defending the opponent's three-point shooter, pay attention to close defense and don't give them easy three-pointers. Popovich is obviously a little scrupulous about the Warriors' three-pointers, but think about it, if the Warriors are really allowed to shoot their three-pointers, the Spurs will not be far from being shot to death. Angzi nodded, protecting the weak side. This task is not easy, because the Warriors are also a team that likes to grab your weak side and hit hard. Through various pick and roll coordination, rush to the weak side to shoot. The game started quickly, and with the sound of the whistle, the two teams started the game. Andrew Bogut won the jump ball, so in the first round after playing, Angzi faced Klay Thompson. This season, Klay Thompson's improvement is also obvious. He has accurate three-pointers and tough defense. He has turned into an important player on the outside of the Warriors, both offensively and defensively. But on the offensive end, Klay Thompson's task is to cut the ball without the ball. His ability to hold the ball is not good, and now the Warriors have the ball in control of Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry held the ball for a while, then made a breakthrough, rushed to the inside and completed a layup, scoring 2 points. Tony Parker took the basketball from the backcourt and advanced to the front court. Stephen Curry quickly posted it. Curry's poor defense was purely due to his physical fitness, but he was really defending it. The flexibility is still very troublesome. Tony Parker was a bit annoyed by Curry's post, but thinking of Popovich's arrangement before the game, he accelerated his pace and made a quick cut, bringing Curry into the three-point line. After rushing inside, Tony Parker threw the ball directly to the back. Angzi bypassed Duncan's screen and directly received the basketball at the top of the arc. Klay Thompson was stuck. Angzi took the ball and shot directly. There was no defender within 2 steps in front of him, and cheers were already on the sidelines. Angzi, a three-pointer with no defense. Swish, come in. The live DJ yelled amidst cheers. Angzi waved his hand excitedly. He made the first goal in the opening game, and some of them were played in this game. With the Warriors' offense, Stephen Curry took the ball to the front court unhurriedly, and Tony Parker stood on the three-point line, waiting for Curry to come over. Curry stepped on a foot 2 steps beyond the three-point line and suddenly took off. Tony Parker was shocked and rushed up. However, with only a scream, Stephen Curry scored a long-range three-pointer 2 steps away. Stephen Curry shook his head and started celebrating, and the ATT arena rang out with his. Angzi ran towards the front court while looking up at Curry's return defense. He stepped directly on the three-point line 2 steps away, and then the three-pointer was launched like a precise missile, and finally it was drilled. Entering the basket, the visual effect is very shocking. An 11 is also thinking, does he have this ability? After thinking about it, he still doesn't have it. If he really makes a three-pointer 2 steps away from the three-point line, Angzi may be able to score 1 or 2 goals, but his shooting percentage must be terrible. So he shook his head and started to throw himself into the offense. His three-pointer is already very good, and there is no need to compare with Curry. Tony Parker took possession of the ball from the outside. Just when everyone thought Parker was going to play an answer ball, Parker suddenly hit the ground and passed the ball to Tim Duncan on the inside. Duncan got the ball in the penalty area, turned around one step at a time, and took a step towards the inside. David Lee, who defended Duncan, quickly retreated to defend. As soon as he retreated, Duncan immediately pulled it back, moving quickly, and slapped the ball twice at the same time. And then jumping up is a close shot. David Lee jumped up and interfered, but when he jumped up, Duncan had already thrown the ball. With a scream, the ball was scored and the Spurs equalized the score. The Warriors' offensive speed began to accelerate. Stephen Curry urged Bogut to serve from the backcourt. After receiving the ball, he didn't even want to wait for Bogut. He rushed to the front court and still had the last goal beyond the three-point line. 2 paces away, with a scream, another ultra-long three-pointer. Damn, Angzi exploded directly. Off the court, Popovich couldn't help shouting, "Tony! What are you doing? Post it! Post it!" Stephen Curry shook his head and gritted his braces. For a while, the ATT arena was full of boos. With 8 points in a row in the opening game, Stephen Curry is already a bit superb, feels good enough to explode, and the Spurs also scored consecutive offenses, but unknowingly, the Warriors led by 1 point. Popovich was a little anxious and kept shouting from the sidelines to direct the game, so that the referee also ran over to warn him. And the first quarter of the game ended in the exchange between the Spurs and the Warriors. At 31-27, the Warriors led the Spurs by 4 points. These 4 points are basically a pure 3-point lead, so the Spurs are a bit wrong behind, but this should not hinder the excitement of some reporters off the court. The Spurs can't guard the Warriors' offense. Are they going to have their first defeat in the playoffs this season? Are the Warriors really going to be black? The Spurs' dilemma made them very excited. The second quarter started quickly. The Spurs replaced the bench, and the Warriors let Curry take Jarrett Jack and a group of benches to continue the second quarter. At the beginning of the second quarter, after Mills missed a layup, the Warriors grabbed the rebound. Stephen Curry quickly rushed to the basket with the ball, and then gave the ball to Carl Landry. Carl Landry turned around and scored 2 points for a jumper. The reporters off the court almost cheered, if it weren't for the thought that they were at the Spurs' home court. The 6 points difference, the Spurs' situation seems to be really a bit bad. But the more this kind of time, the less anxious the Spurs, they still organize the offense slowly. Boris Diaw mentioned that he took the ball in the high post. After he got the ball, he squeezed into the inside through the gap opened by Manu Ginobili, and then he put the ball away and made a jump shot, cheating Carl Landry and the Warriors' substitute. Center Festus Azari double-doubled. After being double-teamed, Boris Diaw passed the ball directly, and the basketball turned around in the hands of Aaron Baines, who was inside, and finally came to Angzi's hands. Drummond Green, who was defending Angzi, was just about to make up for Aaron Baines, but when he saw Angzi taking the ball, he immediately turned around and rushed towards Angzi. Seeing Drummond Green, Angzi thought of the regular season. During the regular season, Angzi was a little uncomfortable being guarded by Drummond Green. But Angzi is not the Angzi it was at that time. Drummond Green quickly rushed over. Angzi drove the ball twice, adjusted it, and then quickly accelerated and whizzed past Green. Drummond Green hurriedly wrapped Angzi, but Angzi only rushed for a few steps, and suddenly stopped. Drummond Green also abruptly stopped his footsteps, but Angzi's movements were not over yet, he was half and half. Turned around, followed by another step backward, the dribbling hand kept on, and then suddenly turned around again and broke through directly again. Drummond Green couldn't keep up with this breakthrough. An 11 rushed for 2 or 3 steps again, and when he saw Andrew Bogut greet him, he knew he had to do it. So there was a light jump in place, and the ball was thrown in with a scream. During the entire breakthrough, Angzi played Drummond Green with his golf quotient. Before the game, Drummond Green didn't talk less, what the Spurs and the Warriors, the winner will only be the Warriors. What's more, although he is a substitute, he will be a man defense Spurs substitute and all misfired. Now Drummond Green has been taught by Angzi. Even Angzi can't guard against it, dare to scream like that before the game. In response to the cheers from the scene, Angzi waved his hand frantically, bringing the atmosphere in the arena to a climax. Seeing crazy Spurs fans, Stephen Curry wanted to make a fast break and destroy the morale of the Spurs, but he quickly held the ball to the front court, and when he was just about to continue to break through, Patrick Mills took it directly. The ball broke. Stephen Curry still didn't get rid of his old problems, and his careless dribbling learned a lesson at this time. Mills' steal immediately launched a fast break, and Ginobili rushed to the front court first and succeeded in catching the ball and making a layup. The cheers continued, but the time was high and low, and the moment Manu Ginobili succeeded in the layup, he naturally reached the highest peak, rumbling, and shaking his ears. However, in this hot and crazy atmosphere, the Spurs are getting better and better. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-San Buletinji. Chapter 314. The 6-point difference directly caught up to 2 points, and then the Spurs took advantage of the victory to pursue, and directly hit 2 waves of fast breaks, turning the difference over. The reporters off the court were happy for nothing, and the Spurs began to control the rhythm steadily. In the middle of the second quarter, Angzi, who started the game, was replaced and rested, Danny Green played, and Stephen Curry also left the field to rest. The Warriors did not have Curry on the court, but replaced them with David Lee, hoping to continue to maintain their offensive power, but David Lee's ability is aside for the time being, his state alone cannot be averaged in the playoffs. 30 points compared to Stephen Curry. So the Spurs took advantage of this gap and began to widen the points difference. Aaron Baines stuck David Lee hard, David Lee's back singles, turned around and missed a jumper. The Spurs immediately protected the rebound and then launched a fast break. Mills made a quick layup and the point gap widened. Then the Warriors got the ball or David Lee. He played Aaron Baines in the high post. Aaron Baines's offensive ability is lacking, but his defensive performance is still very good, otherwise Popovich would not use Aaron so much. Long Baines played twice, David Lee Kankan pushed Aaron Baines, and then, like the previous one, pushed Aaron Baines, turned around and made a jumper, and finally scored. However, the Spurs turned around and returned a three-pointer, and the gap widened. Mark Jackson is a little anxious. His performance in leading the team this season is already very good, but the team has never intended to renew his contract. This makes Mark Jackson suffocate. He is thinking, if he takes the Warriors. In the end, even if the Warriors management did not want to renew his contract, they had to renew his contract, right? For this Warrior, Mark Jackson sees it very clearly. The potential is endless. Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson on the outside are both super three-point shooters. There is also David Lee on the inside. This combination continues to be a partner, and the future of the Warriors is unlimited. But now against the Lao Spurs, the Warriors' lack of experience is somewhat obvious. The point difference continued to widen, and in this way, after 2 quarters, the Spurs led by 11 points. This point difference is equivalent to the fact that the Spurs directly won the Warriors by 15 points in the second quarter, which looks quite terrifying. The second half of the game officially began, and the two sides reattached the main force. Although the Warriors were 11 points behind in 2 quarters, the Warriors still had a chance to win. They let Stephen Curry rest for half a quarter to prepare for the second half. At the beginning of the game, the ball was handed over to Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry first scored 2 points with a breakthrough jumper. Then, when the ball came back, Anzi took the pass from Parker and shot it, but was rushed to the shot. Klay Thompson interfered. With a bang, a jumper was missed, and Andrew Bogut got stuck and grabbed the rebound. An 11 failed to score the first goal of the third quarter. He was a little depressed, holding his head and quickly returning to defense. Although the Warriors had all kinds of rants before the game, Anzi played cleaner in the series than in the previous round. After all, players like Zach Randolph who are full of swear words are still a minority in the league. Although he was clean, Anzi also felt the pressure. The pressure the Warriors put on him. In fact, this is the common idea of all Spurs players after halftime. The Warriors' play style is fundamentally different from that of the Grizzlies. The Warriors are more inclined to offense, and it's the kind of explosive offense. So this game, the Warriors will always burst out suddenly, shocking the Spurs in a cold sweat. Players like Anzi who missed the ball felt even more pressured. After all, every missed goal was to give the Warriors a chance. The Warriors quickly began a counter-attack. This time it was Stephen Curry who took the ball. He rushed to the front court and repeated his skills. It was another three-pointer running and hitting with a scream. Stephen Curry clenched his fist and then waved it. This three-pointer directly reduced the difference between the two teams to 6 points. The Warriors opened a wave of 5-0, and Popovich became anxious. He stood on the sidelines with his hips akimbo and made a press-up gesture. Tony Parker also returned a gesture to show that he understood. The meaning of Popovich's gesture is actually very obvious. He is asking the Spurs to attack with all their strength. First, stabilize the attack. Tony Parker was still holding the ball steadily. An 11 suddenly came out at this time and directly helped Parker block Curry. Parker took a step and cut towards the inside. Klay Thompson immediately went to make up the defense, and Anzi faced Stephen Curry in this way. At this time, Parker passed the ball back, Anzi received the ball and faced Stephen Curry's defense. In this way, even if Anzi encounters a chance to play a misplaced singles, although it is recognized that Stephen Curry's defense is not good, Anzi dare not make such generalizations. He dribbles the ball seriously and is not ready to directly cast a shot on Curry's head. 3 points. After holding the ball for a while, Anzi suddenly made a breakthrough, swayed Curry, and then stepped back and jumped directly. Although Curry also reacted in time, his interference was still a step slower. He could only extend his hand as much as possible to block Anzi's sight. But it's not very useful. The basketball slammed into the hoop with a precise sound. After the goal was scored, Anzi's second goal finally did not miss again. This shot also made Popovich a sigh of relief. The point difference expanded to 8 points. Next, the Spurs only need to maintain these 8 points. The advantage is enough. In the next game, the Spurs did what Popovich thought. The Spurs' offense was very stable, and the Warriors were always able to burst out wave after wave. In the 7th minute of the third quarter, Mark Jackson couldn't sit still. He got up and called the first timeout of the second half. At this time, the Spurs led the Warriors by 9 points at 72-63, and the 9-point difference was placed in the third quarter. In fact, it is still a trackable point difference, but the most critical problem now is that the Warriors have no meaning to catch up with the point difference at all, which makes Mark Jackson very impatient. The Spurs' performance is very stable. They firmly hold their lead. Compared with the old Spurs, the Warriors are much worse. They have a momentum, but it is difficult to narrow the difference. The two commentators of Turner Sports began to analyze the situation of the game. The two commentators dispatched by Turner Sports for this game are Mike Trick and Mike Bryn, which can also be regarded as the trump card combination of Turner Sports. Hearing Mike Trick's analysis, Mike Bryn also nodded and said, "Before the game, people said that the Warriors are dark horses, but their dark horse journey is basically over, because they met the Spurs. I think this, in other words, it makes sense, because the Spurs are characterized by stability. They can use their stable state to beat you if you switch to another team. Perhaps the Warriors can also use their explosive offense to defeat opponents then win the game, but against the Spurs, this trick won't work." Mike Bryn also analyzed a pass. The game came back. The Warriors also began their adjusted offense. The timeout Warriors made a more obvious adjustment. They replaced Jarrett Jack and made Klay Thompson the small forward position. The combination of 2 point guards obviously hopes to play a smoother offense, not that kind. From time to time, a wave of offense erupts. On the first ball, Jarrett Jack and Curry came together. Curry reversed the hang and passed the ball to Jack, who cut the ball. Jack rushed inside, completed the layup, and scored 2 points. The Warriors bench cheered, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the boos from the AT&T Arena. The Spurs' offense was still not rushed. Tony Parker passed the halftime. Then Duncan mentioned the high post, a pick and roll. Parker rushed inside and David Lee made it up. As a result, Parker made a pass back and Duncan received the ball. On Curry, it formed a big fight against the small. Duncan was naturally unwilling to let go of this opportunity. Although his position was a little farther away from the maximum range he could grasp, after all, he faced Curry, which was equivalent to an open opportunity. So Duncan made a jumper in place and hit it with a scream. The Spurs also scored, and they still don't give the Warriors a chance. The game continued. The Warriors' David Lee suddenly pulled out the inside line, blocking Parker with a bang for Stephen Curry. Curry moved a step, taking advantage of Duncan before he came forward to make up the defense, directly hit a three-pointer. A three-point precision hit. The Warriors' bench is boiling. Then, the Warriors were like finding a scoring kit. They used Curry's pick and roll to make a three-point jumper, hitting consecutive three-pointers. The score difference has shrunk rapidly from 9 points, 8 points, 7 points, 6 points. By the time Curry and Thompson hit 5 three-pointers together, Mike Bryn was already exclaiming, "Another three-pointer, another three-pointer." The Oakland Warriors rain three-pointers. The game is far from over. The Warriors have beaten the Spurs. Mike Bryn didn't care about being slapped and shouted in excitement. The three-point rain played by the Warriors was indeed very exciting. With a beep, Popovich also called a timeout. The Warriors' sudden explosion made him a little helpless, and there were 2 points left, but Popovich didn't blame anyone. He knew that the Warriors' tactics were a bit rogue. Yes, it is through the pick and roll, staring at your weak side and hitting hard, and after the pick and roll, the direct jump shot is played. Even if the weak side is pre-arranged for defense, it is too late to make up. Anxie was actually a little nervous. He was actually responsible for these few goals. The Warriors made 5 three-pointers and almost every goal was hit on the weak side. And he thought of Popovich's arrangement before the game, so I'm afraid Popovich will trouble him. Popovich didn't find Anxie's trouble, but he threw Curry's trouble directly to Anxie. And, next, you go to defend Stephen Curry. Remember, it's single defense. And 11 nodded, knowing that Popovich was going to use his single defense ability. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 316. After the timeout, the Spurs attacked. Tony Parker quickly lay up and scored 2 points, bringing the point difference back to 4 points. Tomato Novel Network Then Angzi met Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry's dribble was still careless. He slowly led the ball across the center line from the back court. An 11 took a few steps forward and was about to post it as soon as Curry crossed the sideline. But the corner of his eye found that David Lee came out again, and he ran towards the three-point line. Angzi's eyes jumped and he knew that the Warriors' outside cover had come again, and it seemed that after having tasted the sweetness, the Warriors were constantly using the same routine. Off the court, Vich frowned, and Mike Budenholzer on the side said, "The Warriors' offensive routine has been used since the regular season, but not much. Maybe it's because I think this game has a good effect." "Have you been using it all the time?" Vicky nodded, and he relaxed. "In fact, it's not a big deal. Let and go on defense first. If we still can't defend, we can change defense with a smaller lineup." Vich has come up with the point. Why can the Warriors create so many three-pointers for Curry? In fact, it was because after Stephen Curry passed the screen, the Spurs were defending Duncan or Splitter. Before they had time to stick up, Curry made a three-pointer with a very fast shot. On the field, David Lee had moved to Angzi's side, directly blocking Angzi. Curry moved laterally, and saw that Angzi was about to be thrown away again. At this moment, Angzi retreated, and then another large-scale lateral movement, suddenly moving one step towards the lateral, and Stephen Curry, who was about to make a shot, rushed over. Stephen Curry continued to shoot like the previous few goals, but at this moment, a behemoth rushed over. "This is Angzi." Stephen Curry was taken aback. In order to avoid Angzi, his shooting hand was lowered. Stephen Curry, the three-pointer after the screen is shot again. With a bang, the basketball bounced on the hoop and didn't make it. Rebounds, Vich stood up and shouted. Splitter, who was inside, got stuck and grabbed the rebound. After defending Curry's three-pointer, the Spurs got a chance to widen the point difference. Vich began to wave Fang Chiu from the sidelines. He kept making Parker speed up, and made a pressing gesture again. Parker controlled the ball to the front court, and the Spurs also played a high position screen. Duncan directly mentioned the 45-degree high position. An 11 came out from the bottom corner. Duncan blocked Klay Thompson, who was defending. An 11 threw away Klay. Thompson caught the ball directly on the three-point line jumper, and scored 2 points with a scream. 6 points difference. There is 1 minute left in the third quarter. Fangiafiction net dash. The Warriors still didn't believe in evil, and continued to cooperate with the screen outside the three-point line. This time it was an 11, struggling to break free from David Lee's cover, and then once again interfered with Curry's three-pointer. After 2 consecutive misses, the Spurs had another wave of offense. Duncan scored from the inside line, and the point difference widened to 8 points. At the end of the third quarter, the Warriors failed to make the final shot and gave the Spurs 2 seconds, but it was difficult to score a goal in these 2 seconds. Parker made a super long three-pointer in the back court, which was a very normal consecutive. The basket was not touched. At the end of the 3 quarters, the Spurs led the Warriors by 8 points. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, both the Spurs and the Warriors replaced their main players. After all, physical strength should be reserved for the real decisive battle. The Spurs think so, and the Warriors do the same. Although they are behind by these 8 points, but this 8 points, it is always trackable, even in the final stages of the game. Of course, the premise is that the Warriors bench can stabilize this point difference, and even narrow the point difference until the main force plays. In this regard, Mark Jackson is still very confident. After all, in terms of the depth of the bench, the Warriors are still relatively strong in the league. The insides are Carl Landry and Azari, the outsides Jarrett Jack and Richard Jefferson, and Della young players like Mondgren and Kent Bazemore. But when he was actually on the bench for the Spurs, Mark Jackson knew where the real gap was. Tomato Novel Network dash. Or where is the really powerful substitute? Although Angzi played the starting lineup in this game and the Spurs lacked the important Angzi off the bench, the Spurs relied on the suppression of the Warriors by Manu Ginobili and Mills to widen the point difference. The game has not yet entered the final stage, it has been beaten by the Spurs to lose the suspense. With 6 minutes left in the last quarter, the Spurs were already 15 points ahead. Mark Jackson hurriedly replaced the main force, it was too late, but the Warriors still replaced the main force, and Vich followed the Warriors. Later, the main force was replaced. Although there were 6 minutes left in the game, Mark Jackson still felt that 15 points could be chased, and he decided to take a gamble. The game is not far from the end. Curry did his best in this game. He once again scored 30-plus points, but the team still fell behind the Spurs and wanted to chase 15 points in the last 6 minutes. Curry himself had no confidence. He started to fire from the outside, but his shooting percentage is no longer better than the previous quarters. The Spurs used their stable offense to let the Warriors realize the gap. The offense still needs to be stable. An explosive offense is ultimately useless. When the whistle sounded at the end of the game, huge cheers broke out in the AT&T Arena. The Spurs won the game in the first game. In the end, the Spurs won the game with an 11-point advantage. Fanjiak Xioshuo Wang -- The point difference for the Spurs in the final win was not very big, 11 points, which is not big or small. But the media still hold a pessimistic view on the future of the Warriors. The dark horse can't go down anymore, the stability of the Spurs defeated everything. The Warriors lost their first game in the Western Conference Finals. In this series, the Warriors should honestly accumulate experience. The overall finals of the finals have been set, the Spurs will face the Heat again, is the Heat revenge, or the Spurs consecutive championship? All the remarks seem to say that it was impossible for the Warriors to advance. It was naturally extremely uncomfortable to hear these words from the big mouths and ears of the Warriors. So before the start of the Second War, Andrew Bogut stood up again. Come out, we just lost one game. There are 7 games in a series. This is the first game. Why do everyone think we are finished? Moreover, we only lost 11 points. This point difference means that we still have unlimited possibilities in the future games, don't we? Andrew Bogut didn't fire at the Spurs. He knew that even if he fired at the Spurs, it would have little effect, and the Spurs would not be ignored. He just argued for the Warriors, and then inside the Warriors, he continued to encourage a group of young people as a big brother. There are 2 days between the Western Conference Finals, and within these 2 days, the second game of the Eastern Conference Finals began. In an interview before the game, David Fizdale said that the Heat's goal is to enter the finals as soon as possible. Although there is no sweep, everyone can hear that the Heat's goal is to sweep the Pacers. Obviously the first game victory was given to David Fizdale's unlimited confidence. The second battle between the Heat and the Pacers began, and in San Antonio, Angzi, who had finished a day of training, returned home. Pushing the door and shouting, "Abby, I'm back." Then there was a sound of footsteps, and Abby rushed out of the house, and then saw Angzi had changed his slippers, so he pulled Angzi. "Come on, Ann." Angzi was confused, "What's the matter?" "I have picked a few houses, come and take a look with me." "Why are you picking a house?" Looking at Abby, who was a little excited, Angzi was a little confused, but soon Angzi reacted, "Are you ready to buy a house?" Abby had already spread a few photos of the house on the table, then looked at Angzi, and replied, "Of course, yes, you got so much money back, why don't you buy a house, have you kept renting this house?" After saying this, she also picked up her fingers, "Also, not only do you want to buy a house, but your car should also be changed. Anyway, you are also a small NBA star." It's time to change a luxury car. In addition, when you finish the playoffs, I'm still going to take you to Europe and add some clothes for you. Angzi touched his nose. He was inexplicably moved, but think about it, is this moved? It's too easy for me to be moved. He took Abby to sit down. Abby, I thought about something for a long time, but never said it. What's the matter? Abby's face changed. Angzi smiled, it's nothing big, I'm going to leave San Antonio next season. Leaving San Antonio, Abby was a little surprised. Angzi can also imagine Abby's surprise. After all, he hasn't talked about leaving the Spurs a few times. He has also mentioned it in front of Abby before, but Abby may have forgotten it a long time ago. Say, forget after you say it. He explained, yes, I think I should leave San Antonio for my career considerations. Where are you going? Abby did not continue to ask why Angzi left. After all, in her opinion, it doesn't matter whether Angzi leaves or not, she can leave with Angzi anyway. I don't know yet, my contract hasn't expired yet, and 11 shook his head, and then looked at Abby with a funny face. Abby thought for a while, grabbed the photos of the house on the table, and said, the house will be ignored for now. When you know where to go next, we will look at the house again. And 11 nodded and gave a hum. What about you? What are you going to do? Angzi asked, and was a little silent. Abby is a Fox Sports reporter stationed in San Antonio. If Angzi leaves San Antonio and Abby can't transfer from San Antonio, wouldn't it be two places separated? Angzi can't stand it? Abby tilted his head and thought for a while, I'll quit my job, let's quit, anyway, you can make money like this. Abby laughed, and Angzi laughed too. Okay, no problem, I support your resignation. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yiwen-san Buletinji. Chapter 317. Tomorrow Yiwen's birthday, so there will be an outbreak, hereby preview. Angzi told Abby about his desire to leave San Antonio, and then accepted Abby's suggestion to say hello to Evo Clark in advance, at least to prepare for the next off-season. pen@fun@GEWUE. Understood, N, but it's a coincidence. Buford just contacted me and wanted to reopen the contract renewal negotiations, Evo Clark said with a smile on the other end of the phone. Do you want to renew in advance? And 11 shook his head, and then said. Bite the previous price. After hesitating for a while, and 11 added another sentence, add one more condition. I don't want to continue playing as a substitute next season. Evo Clark said simply and neatly, I know, I will have a good talk with the Spurs management. And 11 nodded, well, by the way, how is Yi now? Angzi cares about the UAE. Although the free market has not yet opened, many teams are already in contact with free agents in advance. Yi? He is in good condition now. Several teams are already in contact with us. The Houston Rockets also hope to renew their contract with Yi. However, Yi is still considering that the bids of several teams are similar. See Yi's personal choice. That's good. Angzi hung up the phone. The UAE is in good condition and will continue to stay in the NBA next season. The problem should not be big. Angzi thought of Xiao Guo again at this time. The NBA draft will soon begin, but Angzi found that there seems to be no news of Xiao Guo participating in the draft. After flipping through the phone, Angzi flipped to Xiao Guo's number, and then dialed it directly. It was already morning in China. Xiao Guo just finished his morning exercise and the phone rang. He took out his cell phone and took a look. Note, Senior NBA, Xiao Guo hurriedly picked up the phone. Hey, brotherin. Well, it's me, Xiao Guo, I haven't contacted you for a long time, so I called and asked you what's going on. It's okay, it's already the main force in CBA. Xiao Guo was full of smiles. Oh, that's not bad. By the way, the national team has recently started training, are you in the national team now? Angzi suddenly thought of the notification letter sent to him by the Basketball Association some time ago. It seems that the national team started training a month ago. Up. Angel, don't expose people. Short Xiao Guo suddenly hesitated a little. Angzi froze for a moment. What's the matter? I didn't make the national team. How come? Really, I didn't enter. What about the guard of the national team? Who else can play without you? And 11 was a little puzzled, even a little weird. Chen Jianghua, Lu Xiaoyu, and Brother Wei. Angzi was silent for a moment. Chen Jianghua and Lu Xiaoyu, these two are from the eastern Guangdong gang. It seems that the national team is going back to the old way again. From this point of view, it is better to let Deng Huade continue to lead the team. At least Deng Huade has autonomy. The right to choose people. After thinking about it, Angzi felt that since Xiao Guo failed to make the national team, then don't waste time at home. Xiao Guo, let's do that. Come to the United States for a while. I happen to have a personal training team. Come and practice together. This, isn't it? Xiao Guo hesitated again. And 11 said directly, what's wrong with this? Come on now, your career is important, come and practice for a while. Hey, Xiao Guo agreed with a smile. After making this call, Angzi touched a hot cell phone. He thought about it and asked Xiao Guo to come for special training. Then why not find a few more domestic young players for special training? There is even a special training camp dedicated to the country. Thinking of this, Angzi feels reliable, but I really want to get things right, and I have to discuss it with Mike Procpio. After all, it's okay to insert a little Guo in. If there are too many people, it is estimated that Angzi will have to add money. This matter has to be discussed again. Think about it carefully. Angzi called Ivo Clark again, asked Ivo to help, and asked some basketball trainers to talk to Mike Procpio at the same time, to see if I could add more money and get a training session. Camp out. As for Angzi himself, he is going to spend some money to find a big dream this off-season. The second game between the Heat and the Pacers is over. At the American Airlines Arena in Miami, the tenacious Pacers forced the Heat to the final quarter, and then used a wave of 10-3 to lead the Heat by 7 points, and finally the 7 points. The lead has been maintained to the end. In this way, in the second game of the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pacers beat the Heat 100-93 away, and the series tied 1-1. In this game, Roy Hibbert once again played the role of the Heat killer. He scored 29 points and 10 rebounds in the game, which is completely the data of a super center. In contrast, Paul George's 22 points and 6 assists are worse. A lot of work, and LeBron James scored 36 points, 8 rebounds and 3 assists on 14 of 20 shots, which also failed to help the Heat win. The second game between the Heat and the Pacers is over, and the second game between the Spurs and the Warriors begins. In the second game, the Spurs made adjustments again. Angzi, who started the last game, returned to the bench. Perhaps Vich felt that the effect of Angzi's starting in the last game was mediocre. In short, the starting shooting guard in this game has become Danny Green. At the beginning of the second game, the players on the Spurs side showed a strong offense. After Danny Green was replaced, the Spurs starting offense became more performant. Danny Green stayed in the corner and Kahalun Nader is active in the middle distance, Tony Parker has the ball, Duncan is active in the interior, and Thiago Splitter is active in the high position. As a result, the Spurs played a more organized offense, and it seemed that without Angzi, the Spurs played even better in the starting lineup. However, after one game, the Spurs scored 33 points and the Warriors also scored 30 points. Both teams scored high. Vich frowned. The starting line was not on Angzi, and the defense was worse. Greg, I heard that N rejected the team's contract extension again? And this time the rejection was not because of the amount, but because the team could not give him the promise of starting. Sean Marks appeared on the sidelines and he watched, looking at the frowning Vichy, asked thoughtfully. "Yes, Sean, do you have any ideas?" Vich did not deny that the players were walking off the court. He lowered his voice and said to Sean Marks, "No idea, Greg. I think that although N has switched offense, his impact on defense is still the presence of the team second only to Tim, and his offense is actually not bad, and his three-point shots are very good. There is also an emergency stop jumper and backup singles. Why not let him start and let Kahi replace it?" Sean Marks put forward his idea, which is also a place he puzzles. Scene, are you very optimistic about N? Vich didn't directly answer Sean Marks's question, but instead asked another question. Sean Marks frowned. "What do you mean?" Vicky smiled. Sean Marks is now not only the assistant coach of the team, but also the manager of the team's player development department, which is considered to be in the management. And Sean Marks is also responsible for the Spurs scout work, so Sean Marks' vision is still very good. Kahi can be an all-star player or even a superstar, and he may end here. Hearing this sentence, Sean Marks disapproved. Why? And has also improved a lot. He has also developed a back and stop jumper this season. But his emergency stop jumper is far from the top level, isn't it? The back solo is a bit top-notch, but for the defenders, the backside technique is just a technique to enrich their offensive methods, and they want to use the backside. It is still difficult to become a superstar, so I am not optimistic about N's future. Vich took a step, as if he was about to say the last few words, and left. Sean Marks glanced not far away, and sure enough, on-site reporter Doris Burke was already waiting for Vicky. And Kahi is different. This season, he has developed a back body, developed low post technique, and a fall back jumper. The breakthrough and mid-range shooting are very strong, and the three-pointer is also good. I think Kahi, with this development going on, the possibility of him becoming a superstar is very high. After saying these few words, Vich turned and left. Sean Marks looked at Vicky leaving with disapproval in his heart. Greg, you may have done a lot of right things before, but with regard to N, I can be sure that you were wrong. Thinking silently in his heart, Sean Marks didn't say these words. After chatting with Vich, Sean Marks returned to his seat, and Mike Budenholzer next to him looked at Sean Marks with a smile. How? What did Greg say? Sean Marks shook his head. Greg sticks to his previous ideas. Mike Budenholzer squinted his eyes, and then said, do you think N will choose to leave San Antonio next? Yes, if it were me, I would leave too. Mike Budenholzer smiled. Then my chance is here. Sean Marks also smiled. Mike Budenholzer said his opportunity was coming. Sean Marks knew what this opportunity meant. Although the playoffs are not over yet, Mike Budenholzer has decided to leave San Antonio, and Vicky knows about it. It's just that Mike Budenholzer hasn't decided where he will go next, but now Mike Budenholzer has received a lot of head coach invitations. At least there is no shortage of next home. If Mike Budenholzer finds his next home, then he can use his good relationship with Angzi to sign Angzi. This is the opportunity, Mike Budenholzer said. By the way, Sean, do you really think that if N starts and Kahi replaces him, the Spurs will be stronger now? Of course, although N's offensive methods are not as rich as Kahi's, but N's three-pointers and CW shooting accuracy are unmatched by Kahi, and N's off the ball is also very good. Coupled with the top back, in the starting lineup, the offense is definitely stronger than it is now, because compared to Kahi, N's offensive threat is greater, and the defense is even more important. Mike Budenholzer thoughtfully, he finally said, this year our championship situation is not as good as we imagined. Maybe we should make some changes. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yiwen San Buletinji. Chapter 319. An 11 didn't know the discussion about himself on the coaching bench, and Popovich put him on the court in the second quarter. Then, the Spurs came off the bench, and the Warriors collapsed in a wave. The Warriors are under great pressure on the bench. After Anzi returned to the bench, the Spurs' offensive power and defense were much stronger than in the previous game. With Anzi's presence, the internal and external combination of the Spurs bench has been very successful. Anzi, Manu Ginobili, Patrick Mills, the three opened the Spurs' offense. With the backup line of Anzi and Aaron Baines, the Spurs suppressed the Warriors regardless of offense and defense, and Mark Jackson had to advance. Put on Stephen Curry, but the situation is still bad. With Anzi's three-pointer, the Spurs' lead came to 12 points, exceeding 10 points for the first time. Then, the Warriors cramped for a while, narrowing the point difference, but the Spurs still stabilized the situation, and then the same method, through the suppression of the field, gradually expanded the lead again. After halftime, the Spurs led by 15 points. In the second half, the two main players played, the Warriors finally found some opportunities, once again narrowed the point difference, the point difference became about 10 points. However, when the Spurs came off the bench and faced the Warriors, the situation of the game took a sharp turn. In this way, at the end of the three quarters, the Spurs led the Warriors by 17 points. At the end of the three quarters, the Spurs led by 17 points. This difference is not enough for the Spurs to determine the victory of the game in advance. However, the main force of the Spurs in this game is always suppressed by waves of erupting Warriors, which makes Popovich wrinkle raised eyebrows. Mike Budenholzer walked to Popovich's side and said softly, "Greg, at this time, let N enter the starter, the effect may be better." Popovich shook his head, "But what about the offense?" N overlapped with Kahi on the offensive end. "Just let Kahi leave the field." Popovich froze for a moment, and then nodded immediately, "It is indeed a good way, so let's let N and Danny partner on the wing in the fourth quarter." Popovich is not the kind of head coach who doesn't know how to work, otherwise he would not be able to get so high. Mike Budenholzer's suggestion, he accepted it with kindness, so in the fourth quarter, Anzi continued to play, and Dan Niglin partnered on the wing. In the fourth quarter, the Spurs took a 17-point lead. The task of the Spurs in the fourth quarter was very simple, and it was enough not to be destroyed by the Warriors' next outbreak. But it's easier said than done, but it's a bit dangerous to do. After all, what this Warrior is best at is to rain a three-pointer anytime and anywhere, so Popovich has paid enough attention to this Warrior. In the fourth quarter, the lineup of the Spurs is the strongest lineup of the Spurs. Center Thiago Splitter, power forward Tim Duncan, small forward Anzi, shooting guard Danny Green and point guard Tony Parker. At the beginning of the game, the Warriors exploded in their adjusted state. Stephen Curry caught the ball from the outside and took 2 steps. After adjusting, he directly faced Tony Parker's defense and scored a three-pointer. The three-pointer entered the net, and the Warriors' bench boiled again. Mark Jackson jumped up in excitement because he saw the Warriors' hope of recovering 17 points, although this hope is still a bit slim. The Spurs slowly controlled the ball to the front court. Anzi stood up at the bottom corner early. Harrison Barnes stared at Anzi. Anzi looked at this rather young small forward, smiled unkindly, and then suddenly, "Speed up and take a step towards the penalty area." Harrison Barnes, who had been in a state of tension, took a step back, and then quickly chose to turn around. An 11 smiled and withdrew directly, and then leaned on his side and galloped past Harrison Barnes. He did not run to the inside, but ran toward the top of the arc. Anzi used his wisdom and speed to get rid of Harrison Barnes. Although Barnes chased him back quickly, his speed was definitely a step slower. Anzi rushed to the top of the arc, received the ball directly from Parker, and then made a jumper on the spot with a scream. 3, the live DJ yelled, and 11 directly returned a three-pointer, and the Warriors' bench was silent. This three-pointer was like a heart-piercing arrow, directly inserted into the Warriors' heart. Stephen Curry made a three-pointer against the Sky, but so what? The Spurs also made a score, the score difference remains unchanged, but there is less time. The reduction in time means that the Spurs are more likely to hold the advantage, but the Warriors will certainly not give up the game so early, so the two teams continue to engage in the main confrontation. The Warriors were still looking forward to winning, but the Spurs didn't give a chance. Stephen Curry continued to hurried three-pointers from the outside, but with a bang. Mark Jackson's heart beat again, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. It's normal for three-pointers to make or lose. However, in the next second, an 11 jumped outside the three-point line and hit a three-pointer again with a scream. ATT Arena burst into cheers, and the DJ on the scene kept yelling, 3 points. From Anxi. San Antonio is 20 points ahead. 20 points, Mark Jackson stayed in a daze. If this continues, the game will soon enter garbage time. In fact, the game has entered garbage time. With a 20-point difference, the Warriors want to play back in one quarter. Unless the Spurs are in a bad state, this is impossible to think about. Next, Stephen Curry hit the inside and scored 2 points, and the Spurs made another three-pointer. This time it was Danny Green who made a three-pointer. Tony Parker attracted defensive points from the outside to Anxi. Anxi once again attracted the defense. Then he scored the ball to Danny Green in the bottom corner. Danny Green made a three-pointer and made a direct hit, which was 21 points away. In the Warriors' offense, Stephen Curry made a fake three-pointer, and then the breakthrough attracted the defense. Klay Thompson circled the top of the arc and hit a three-pointer. Mark Jackson slapped his thigh and stood up and cheered wildly. But the Spurs served quickly, and while the Warriors were still celebrating the three-pointer, they suddenly hit a wave of fast breaks. Tony Parker rushed to the front court and shot a chasing three-pointer, which made a scream. The boos all over the room instantly turned into cheers, and the Warriors' bench was dumb. The point difference remained the same at 21 points. The Spurs were very tenacious in the fourth quarter. The Warriors hit a three-pointer and the Spurs immediately responded with a three-pointer. In this way, in the 5th minute of the fourth quarter, the score difference became 25 points. With 8 minutes left in the final of the game, Mark Jackson silently replaced all the main players. In the end, the Spurs defeated the Warriors 112-85 and won the game, leading the Warriors by a big score of 2-0 in the Western Conference Finals. The Spurs won again. This victory gave the Spurs an absolute advantage in the series. The Western Conference Finals had a one-sided meaning, and the Warriors did not seem to be the Spurs' opponent at all. The big mouth Andrew Bogut disappeared. Obviously, behind 0-2 and the second game defeat, Andrew Bogut has no reason to speak up in front of the media reporters again. But at this time, before returning to Oakland, Mark Jackson accepted an interview with ESPN. In the interview, Mark Jackson still believes that the Warriors are capable of defeating the Spurs to enter the finals because the Warriors still have the ultimate weapon to use. In this regard, Popovich also rarely stood up and responded, "Mark is a good coach." Perhaps the Warriors do have the ultimate weapon, but whether the ultimate weapon is effective or not is unknown. Moreover, the Warriors have the ultimate weapon. This does not mean we do not have. The Spurs also have the ultimate weapon. Anxi froze for a moment. He really didn't know, but after responding to Mark Jackson, Popovich frowned all the time. Obviously the Warriors' ultimate weapon still worries Popovich. Yes, but this worry will not be too serious. The third battle began very quickly. At the Oracle Arena in Oakland, the third battle of the Western Conference was fiercely fought. The Warriors really made a change in this game, but this change made Popovich laugh out loud. It's actually a tactic of outside screens and three-pointers. Is it always used like this? Didn't the Warriors use it before? Mike Budenholzer opened his mouth in surprise. Maybe it's just Mark Jackson's gamble. Popovich smiled faintly. If it were just like this, the Warriors would really not threaten the Spurs. Popovich would soon make it. After adjustment, a small lineup was put on the field, and then used to continuously rotate defenses to fill the gaps after the opponent's pick-and-roll screens. So after half the game, the Warriors found that they had lost even worse. At halftime, the Warriors trailed the Spurs by 22 points, and the Oracle Arena was full of boos. Mark Jackson shook his head helplessly. It was over, everything was over. Indeed, as Popovich said, this tactic of outside screens and three-pointers is just a gamble by Mark Jackson. After seeing the surprise of the Warriors in the first game, he felt that after 2 defeats, the third game, if he can't lose any more, he should take out this tactic and take a gamble. If he succeeds, he will succeed, and he will be willing to lose. In the second half, the Spurs continued to steadily control the situation of the game, and then when the final timer buzzed, the Spurs won the game. In the third game, the Spurs won another 27 points. After 2 great victories in a row, the Western Conference Finals has lost its suspense. In the 3 games, Anzi performed well, with 26 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks in the first game, and 17 points in the second game. In this game, he scored 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 steals. In the Western Conference Finals, the Spurs' victory, Anzi made a big contribution. For the Warriors, even though they lost 3 games in a row, they still have a player worth watching, Stephen Curry, who averaged 30 points per game in the playoffs. In the Western Conference Finals, this score still didn't mean a decline. Scored 34 points in the first game, 33 points in the second game, 29 points in the third game, averaging 32 points in the 3 games. Stephen Curry is in hot form, but his team still can't win. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletnji. Chapter 320. The 3:0 score is a bit dazzling. For the young Warriors, this season is destined not to belong to them. The 4th game soon began. Oracle Arena is still full of seats. Warriors fans still firmly support their team. However, failure is inevitable, but in the cheers of the fans, the Warriors began their last struggle. In the first quarter of the game, the Warriors relied on Stephen Curry's three-pointer and breakthrough, 27:30, only 3 points behind. Although still behind by 3 points, the Oracle Arena still burst into cheers, and they saw the team's fighting spirit. In the second quarter, Stephen Curry still didn't mean to rest. Obviously, Mark Jackson's ideas are completely different from Lionel Hollins'. Mark Jackson and the Warriors, even if they lose, they must struggle to lose. In the second quarter, an 11 also appeared on the court. The Spurs bench began to show off. Manu Ginobili and an 11 made 5 three-pointers at the beginning of the second quarter. An 11 made 3 and Manu Ginobili Lee put in 2, and just like that, the point difference was pulled apart. As for Curry, Anzi's appearance should be fatal. Anzi's arduous defense made Curry no longer have the kind of control of the game in the second quarter. At the end of the half, the Spurs entered the second half with a 67:50, 17-point lead. In the second half of the game, the Spurs slowed down their offensive, which relieved the Warriors. However, the 17-point lag did not shrink. Instead, in the Spurs' stable offense and defense, they expanded by 2 points. At the end of the 3 quarters, the 19-point difference. The Spurs have made the finals more than half of their body. In the last quarter, the first goal of the opening game, Tony Parker hit a 3-pointer, the point difference came to 22 points, this 3-pointer directly made the game completely lost suspense. But Stephen Curry was still there, and the Warriors still didn't give up. The Warriors began to shoot three-pointers constantly, and Popovicto was average and replaced all the main players, but this was also a step ahead for the Warriors. The Spurs changed the bench first, but Mark Jackson was still dreaming. 5 minutes later, the dream woke up. The 33-point difference was a bit dazzling. Mark Jackson called a timeout and silently replaced all the main players. At the moment when the main force was replaced, the Oracle Arena burst into cheers. The game is over, the Spurs won 27-101, another win. The Western Conference Finals defeated the Warriors 4-0, into the finals. San Antonio burst into cheers, and the Spurs made it to the finals again for the second year in a row. The result of this game caused many people to ponder. Does the Spurs' strong performance mean that they have already led their opponents in the finals? After all, after the 3 rounds of the playoffs, the Spurs did not lose a single game. They are only 4 wins away from the Lakers' record of 15 wins and 1 loss. Of course, the premise is that the Spurs can achieve no loss in these 4 games. In this game, Stephen Curry still hit 6 three-pointers under the strict guard of the Spurs. The game was 13 of 30 shots and finally scored 31 points. It was another 30-pointer or more. Stephen Curry's fiery the state, and the feel of the outside line against the sky, from this round of the series, really attracted people's attention. At the end of the 4 games in the Western Conference, the Eastern Conference was caught in a fierce battle. In the 3rd game of the Eastern Conference Finals, the Heat beat the Pacers 113-96 in Indianapolis, winning 2-1. However, 2 days later, it was still in Indianapolis, the Pacers pulled back a game 99-92, and the series drew 2-2. The Spurs ended the Western Conference Finals the next day. The Spurs waited for the results of the Eastern Conference Finals in San Antonio. In the 5th game of the Eastern Conference Finals, Lance Stephenson blew into LeBron James' ears, which triggered a heated discussion in the league. Perhaps this move defeated the Pacers' character. The Race Walkers eventually ended in defeat. The Heat led the Pacers 3-2 and finally won the match point. Then, LeBron James shouted the slogan of ending the Eastern Finals in the next battle, and eventually defeated his character. The tenacious Pacers returned to the home court, defeating the Heat 91-77, and the total score equalized 3-3. Drag the game into a tiebreaker. The Spurs leisurely watched the tiebreaker in San Antonio. In the tiebreaker, the 2 teams played a high-intensity defense in the first quarter. The Pacers scored 21 points and the Heat scored 19 points. The Heat fell behind by 2 points in the first quarter. David Fitzdelton felt bad, so James and Wade continued to play in the second quarter, for fear of being hit by the Pacers bench. The tiebreaker, the Heat can no longer be missed. In the second quarter, James played his best performance, scoring 12 points in a single quarter, while defending Paul George made 0 of 2 shots. The Heat scored 33 points in the second quarter, and the defending Pacers only scored 16 points in the second quarter. After that, the Heat led by 15 points at 52-37 and entered the second half. In the third quarter, the Heat hit the Pacers with a 24-18, and the point difference was further expanded by 6 points. The 21 points difference let David Fizdale breathe a sigh of relief. In the last quarter of the game, the Heat, who did not dare to lose, continued to play the main game. In the end, the game ended, the tiebreaker, the Heat 99-76, won the most critical game. With the Heat defeating the Pacers, the Eastern Conference Finals ended 4-3, and the finals came. The Spurs and Heat have met in the finals for 2 consecutive years, and the battle of sparks hitting the earth has begun again. There is still a 3-day interval between the Eastern Conference Finals and the finals. These 3 days are mainly for the Heat to rest and prepare for the finals. The Heat also quickly arranged for the finals. After the end of the Eastern Conference, they flew directly to San Antonio, and then rented an arena in the suburbs of San Antonio to train and rest while preparing for the finals. During the 3-day break, Ang Zi also picked up Xiao Guo at the San Antonio International Airport. Prior to this, Ivo Clark had helped Ang Zi and Mike Procpio to renegotiate their cooperation. Starting from this season, Ang Zi will have a new cooperation with Mike Procpio. This cooperation is that every year off-season, Mike Procpio has to help Ang Zi train a group of domestic players at the same time, of course, this year only Xiao Guo. For the increased expenses, Ang Zi only allowed Xiao Guo to pay a small portion of his own. Most of Xiao Guo's personal expenses were paid by Ang Zi. Of course, this is not Ang Zi living Lei Feng. Ang Zi paid most of the expenses, and it is also conditional. With this condition, we have to talk about another big move by Ang Zi recently. Ang Zi invested 100 million in Ivo Clark and opened a brokerage company, occupying 80% of the shares, and Ang Zi gave the condition that Xiao Guo would join the broker companies of Ang Zi and Ivo Clark. Xiao Guo agreed without hesitation. In fact, joining Ivo Clark's brokerage company is not bad for Xiao Guo. After all, Ivo Clark is now not only Ang Zi's agent, but also an agent of UAE. Since the two big brothers, Ang Zi and Julian, can find Ivo Clark as an agent, he can naturally too, even if he can't ask for it. As a result, Ivo Clark's brokerage company thus had a third client. For Ivo Clark and Ang Zi, this contract is naturally a steady profit. As long as Xiao Guo can continue to make progress, he will enter the NBA in the future and sit behind the vast Chinese market. This contract cannot be lost if he wants to lose. After Xiao Guo arrived, he immediately began special training under the guidance of Mike Procpio. The content of the special training is very simple: 3-pointers and ball possession. Xiao Guo just played a few rounds with Ang Zi. Mike Procpio found out the two areas that Xiao Guo needs to strengthen most now. Xiao Guo thinks to become an NBA-level point guard. These two skills really need to be strengthened by Xiao Guo. In San Antonio, a suburban arena, the guard opened the door, and a group of reporters soon swarmed in. Pat Riley welcomed the group of reporters in front of the training hall on the media open day before the finals. Pat Riley, David Fisdall, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade participated in the pre-match press conference for the opening game of the finals. Mr. Pat Riley, can I ask you a few questions? At the beginning of the press conference, Mark Stein from ESPN was a little aggressive. Of course, please. Pat Riley was in a good mood, and he nodded. Mark Stein directly began to ask, Mr. Pat Riley, the finals are about to begin. This season is the third year that the Heat have formed the Big Three. If the Heat still cannot succeed this season, how would you judge the three? The future of Giants. Hearing this question, Pat Riley waved his hand directly. I'm sorry, without this assumption, we will be successful this year. Mark Stein smiled. He did not continue to ask, but just continued to ask his next question. Then Mr. Pat Riley, the regular season is below the Spurs, second in the league, and was double killed by the Spurs, please. What do you think of Mr. Fisdall's first year of coaching performance? It was another question with a gun and a stick. Pat Riley frowned. He regretted it a little. It seemed that he shouldn't have asked Mark Stein one question after another. But looking at the other reporters, they seemed to have no questions to ask. They just hid aside and watched his jokes. Of course, Pat Riley also understands that these reporters are asking such implicit and profound questions to irritate themselves and let themselves speak out the best, so Pat Riley is silent on this issue. After a while, he said, I think David did a great job. He led the team to a 27-game winning streak. Although he lost to the Spurs in 2 games, it was only the regular season and the playoffs. It's completely different, and I hope you can see this. Then Mr. Pat Riley, what do you think of the Spurs' record of 12 wins in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs? Pat Riley was silent again, and then said, the Spurs are in good shape, but that doesn't tell everything, because they haven't met us yet. Is it just in good condition? Hearing this short question, Pat Riley was a little annoyed, and asked directly, otherwise. Mark Stein smiled, his smile a little abrupt, and he didn't know if he was laughing at Pat Riley or what he was doing. My question is over, thank you Mr. Pat Riley. As soon as Mark Stein sat down, the reporter behind him raised his hand in a hurry. Obviously, the silence just now was just watching a movie, watching a wonderful show. Now that the good show is over, it is their turn to stage the second good show. David Fizdale, LeBron James, and Wade have all been bombed. The problems are the same as Mark Stein. They focus on the Spurs' excellent form, the Spurs' regular season record better than the Heat, and the Spurs' regular season double-kill Heat. These questions were asked over and over again, and James asked them upset. The Spurs' strength this season is what they can see. The Heat have won 27 consecutive victories. The Spurs ended them. There were 2 duels between the Spurs and the Spurs in the regular season, and the Heat lost both. Coupled with the fact that the Spurs haven't lost a game in the playoffs so far, such a hot state can inevitably make the Heat a little frightened. After all, compared with the Spurs, the Heat state is not so good. They were dragged into the tiebreak by the Pacers. Looking forward, the Bulls also defeated them. Since the playoffs, the Heat have lost 4 games, and this state is nothing compared to the Spurs. The Heat's pre-match press conference ended in a strange atmosphere. The Heat seemed to have answered all the questions, and the reporters left contentedly. In contrast, the Spurs are much simpler here. Popovich directly took Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard to the pre-match press conference, so this press conference, no matter what the reporter asked, he could only get a 1-word or 2-word answer. Most of the time, the press conference was quiet. The Spurs failed to dig into the material, so the reporters can only wait for the start of the finals. But before the start of the finals, this group of reporters still have other things to do, such as comparing the strength of the Spurs and the Heat. If you compare positions, then the point guard position, the Spurs have an absolute advantage, Tony Parker plus Patrick Mills, there is a Corey Joseph at the end of the bench, and the Heat only have Mario Chamos and Norris Cole. Whether it is a starter or a substitute, the Spurs have done so well. Shooting guard position, Dwayne Wade, Ray Allen, McMillan against Danny Green and Manu Ginobili, Tracy McGrady, this position, the Heat should have a slight advantage. Small forward position, Kawhi Leonard, Anzi against LeBron James, Sean Battier and James Jones, this position is also a slight advantage for the Heat. For the power forward position, Tim Duncan, Boris Diaw, Matt Bonner will face Chris Bosh and Rashard Lewis, Udonis Haslem, the 2 teams should be tied at this position. At the center position, Thiago Splitter and Aaron Baines face Chris Anderson and Joel Anthony. The Spurs have a slight advantage in this position. In general, the Spurs have a certain advantage. In this finals, the Spurs still have a better chance of winning. Perhaps, the first consecutive championship in the history of the Spurs is about to come. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 321. After a day of training, Ang Zi stretched, then took out his mobile phone and called Zhang Mingji. Lao Zhang, where is the physical therapist you found for me the day before yesterday? Let him come again. I'll be waiting for him at home. The physical therapist at Ang Zi's mouth is actually an old Chinese doctor from Los Angeles. He once served Dao. Recently, in preparation for the finals, Ang Zi remembered that acupuncture is good for the body and might be able to help him adjust his condition, so he called Zhang Mingji, asked him to find an old Chinese doctor for himself, and then Zhang Mingji invited the old man. The father's name is Song Zhu Chun, a well-known old Chinese doctor in the United States. If it weren't for Zhang Mingji to invite him, the old man would never have come from Los Angeles. If Ang Zi was a Chinese player, the old man would not come, even if Zhang Mingji was there. Go please. On the first day he came, Mr. Song gave Angzi a group of acupuncture and moxibustion. The results were good, but Angzi found that the double consciousness attribute had skyrocketed the next day. The next day, the old man gave Angzi another group of massages. Angzi's whole body was healed, and the dual consciousness attribute was close to its full value. Such a gratifying change made Angzi a little bit unbearable. He wanted to spend a high price to let the old man stay with him. Before each game, he gave himself a massage, and the effect was definitely very good. After returning home, the old man has arrived and was talking to Abby in the living room. When Angzi entered the door, the old man stood up. "Xiaoyan, you are a good foreign wife. She is very good at talking, but unfortunately she can't speak Chinese." Angzi smiled. "Yes, she can't speak Chinese. I'm busy playing basketball and don't have time to teach her. This can't work, she has to be taught. How can she be a Chinese daughter-in-law if she doesn't?" The old man shook his head. Angzi smiled secretly. The old man: "Father, let's get started, it's getting late, you have to go back when you wait." And 11 pointed to the wall clock on the wall of the living room. The old man nodded. "Okay, let's get started. It's in the living room. Today I will do a set of massage for you. The main function is to stretch your muscles and bones." Hey, Angzi agreed, and then helped to spread the floor in the living room. She took off her shirt and lay down on the floor. The old man's new set of massage that stretches the muscles and bones is still very effective. Angzi found that the dual consciousness attribute continues to rise, and the double 99 is full. In this way, Angzi sent the old man back home with joy, and then went home and slept beautifully. The next day I got up early again and practiced for a while back and breakthrough. Then, with a ding in the ear, the system prompts that the upgrade is up. This reminder made Angzi both happy and worried. The happy thing is that you can upgrade before the start of the finals. Then Angzi can get an unexpected new skill. The worry is that Angzi doesn't know which attribute has been upgraded. If it is a breakthrough, of course it couldn't be better. If it's backwards, Angzi can only say one thing: it's better than nothing. Angzi was about to go back holding the ball, and there was another ding sound, and the system prompted to upgrade again. Upgrade again? Is there a mistake? The surprise on Angzi's face can already be seen with the naked eye. Angzi has never experienced continuous upgrades, but if you think about it carefully, it is not surprising. After all, Angzi has been practicing breakthrough and recoil for a while, and it is time to upgrade. It was not until the afternoon of the game that the system prompts the upgrade to be completed twice in succession. Angzi entered the system and checked it. Sure enough, both the breakthrough and receding jumpers were upgraded to 60, while the dual consciousness attribute remained firm at 99. 3-point attribute bonus 90, mid-range shooting attribute bonus 85, single defense attribute bonus 99, steal attribute bonus 95, off-ball attribute bonus 70, back attribute bonus 75, ball possession attribute bonus 83, urgent stop jumper attribute bonus 70, breakthrough attribute bonus 60, backward jumper attribute bonus 60. There is another one: offensive awareness 99, defensive awareness 99. Seeing this, Angzi smiled. Then, before the start of the finals, Angzi will usher in a truly perfect Angzi. On the evening of June 6, 2013, the ATT Arena, San Antonio Spurs and Miami Heat's finals battle began here. The audience seats in the ATT Arena were full of Spurs fans sitting in the arena, wearing white cheering t-shirts and dancing their scarves. The grand appearance ceremony soon began, and the DJ on the spot screamed out the name of Tony Parker. Let's first welcome Tony Parker. So Tony Parker trot out amidst the cheers and screams. CCTV, CCTV, this is the live broadcast of the 2012-2013 NBA Finals, and this is the live broadcast of the 2012-2013 NBA Finals. Across the ocean, CCTV's live signal has just cut in and the scene is going on. During the appearance ceremony, the picture flashed across the faces of Yujia and Zhang, who came to the scene to explain, and then cut directly to the scene. I'm Yujia. It is director Zhang who is explaining the game with me today. We see that the appearance ceremony is going on at the scene. The first one to appear is Tony Parker. Yes, Parker played first, so Tim Duncan should be the finale, but I don't know which Angzi will be the first to play. The appearance ceremony also attracted attention. Director Zhang first said that Jia finished, and then said the words. Took it? Before the voice was over, the DJ on the spot shouted again, next. The one who appeared on the stage was, the swingman from China. Angzi. Angzi rushed out in response to the roar of cheers from the audience. Angzi is out? He is the second to play, although this is the second consecutive season that Angzi has participated in the finals. Director Zhang is still as excited as before. After all, it is still a little bit for the Chinese to be on the stage of the finals consecutively. Difficult. Angzi is the second to play. This order of appearance represents Angzi's position in the Spurs. However, whether Angzi will continue to substitute or appear in the starting lineup in this game is still unclear. When Yujia said these words, he actually hoped to see Angzi appear in the starting lineup, but unfortunately, Angzi was not a starter in this game. Popovich had already announced the starting lineup before the game, and Angzi still is a substitute. The Spurs came out one after another, and the cheers of the ATT Arena were never heard, but when the Heat filed in, there were only boos all over the court. Popovich and Heat coach David Fizdale also came out with their respective coaching staff. The two walked to the center of the court and shook hands with each other with a smile. The pre-match preparations were over. After a short warm-up, the referee stood in the middle of the court holding the basketball. Okay, the game is about to begin. We see that the starting lineups of both sides have already played. On the Spurs side, Angzi still has no starting lineups. The starting lineups are Tony Parker, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Tim Duncan, and Thiago Split. This is their old starting lineup. The Heat starting lineup has been adjusted. The guard combination is still Chalmers and Wade, small forward James, but the inside line is replaced by Bozga Yudnis Haslem. Obviously, David Fizdale knows very well that playing the Spurs must not be bad inside. Director Yujia and Zhang briefly analyzed the starting lineups of both sides, and the game officially began. Split and Bosch jumped the ball. He took the lead and dialed the ball over. The Spurs got the right to the first offense. Angzi held his hands and watched the start of the game off the court. Angzi could feel that he was in very good form in this game, but he could not start, and Angzi was also very helpless, but Angzi was also ready to play, even if it was as a substitute. He can also play his best performance, playing a performance that surprised many people. In the first goal of the opening game, facing Mario Chalmers' defense, Tony Parker changed his direction and left Chalmers behind him. However, Chalmers was very tenacious. Even if he was thrown away, he still entangled him tightly. Lived with Tony Parker. Parker rushed 2 steps toward the inside line and directly shot a mid-range shot. Chalmers behind him put a lot of pressure on him, and the basketball hit the backboard with a bang and bounced directly. The rebound was protected by Haslem inside, and the first attack was missed, and the Spurs quickly returned to defense. The Heat's offense came quickly. After Chalmers received the ball, he rushed to the front court. James withdrew from the bottom corner and took the basketball directly at the 45-degree position. Kawhi Leonard stretched out his long arm, constantly interfering with James' possession of the ball. But James just stood with the ball for a while. On the other side, Wade quickly cut out, and then cut in from the side. James quickly passed the ball and Wade cut in at high speed to catch the ball. Danny Green followed Wade and rushed in. Up inside. However, after receiving the basketball, Wade stopped immediately. With a scream, the ball was scored. On the Spurs side, Tony Parker assisted Duncan, made a mid-range shot, and scored the first time in the game. The Heat's offense, Wade received the ball from a high position, broke through Danny Green's defense, faced Duncan, turned around and shot a jumper after a fake move, and hit again with a scream. After hitting 2 goals in a row, the Flash Dwayne Wade waved his chest and looked passionate. He showed his excellent state as soon as the game opened. The Spurs continued to attack. Tony Parker's breakthrough attracted the defense. After the ball was scored, the Heat's defense line was immediately torn apart, but Kawhi Leonard missed an open three-pointer. Turner Sports commentator Kenny Smith yelled, "Counter-attack." The first counter-attack since the opening of the Heat, fast. Yanway is connected. LeBron James dunks. With a bang, AT&T Arena sounded an exclamation, James dunked successfully, the Heat opened 6-2 lead. The Heat started the game better. Wade scored 2 goals in a row, then grabbed the rebound and launched a counter-attack fast break, hitting all 3 offenses, Kenny Smith side. The Heat started the game well and the Spurs were at a disadvantage. Up. Wade was caught off guard at the beginning, and Popovich began to stand on the sidelines to direct the game. Popovich's supervision did not have any good results. After Tony Parker broke through, he stopped the jumper and hit the iron again. Fortunately, Duncan grabbed the offensive rebound. After grabbing the offensive rebound, Duncan directly lay up, but was directly interfered by Bosch. The tip was still missed, and there were bursts of exclamation from the sidelines. This time the Heat protected the rebounds, James rushed out and hugged the basketball in his arms. On the front court, James beat Leonard with his back, but it was a bit crappy, and he pushed in 2 steps, another pass, Chris Bosh pulled to the high post, a high jumper, scream, clean and neat. The Heat scored another goal. 8-2. Pass. Pass if you can't find a chance, Popovich finally couldn't help but shouted loudly from the sidelines. With this ball, the Spurs finally scored. According to Popovich's words, after passing the ball and passing the ball continuously, he finally found an open. Tim Duncan made a jumper in the penalty area and scored the Spurs' 4th point. The Heat quickly served from the bottom line, James held the ball and rushed directly to the front court, Leonard let James 2 more steps, not letting go, this is the only way to defend James. However, James in this game is a bit unreasonable, he saw Leonard actually let go of 2 steps, a jumper directly outside. 3 points. LeBron James. Can you make it? Swish, come in. LeBron James's finger was on the sidelines, and the Heat's bench was boiling. And Charles Barkley in the commentary was gloating, the Spurs are in trouble. They met a LeBron James with an outside touch. As Charles Barkley said most of the time, LeBron James has no outside three-pointer feel, but this season, James has shown his three-pointer feel in certain games. In other words, James actually has some outside touch, but it's not working well at times, and most of the time it's not working well. Unfortunately, James in this game, threw the ball just now, happened to prove that he has an outside touch in this game. The Heat hit a three-pointer, 11-4. It seems that in this case, Popovich won't be able to call a timeout, but Popovich really didn't call it. He continued to stand on the sidelines with a cold face, a little bit about to call a timeout. It doesn't mean anything. The 5 Spurs on the court could only bite the bullet and continue to attack, but the ball was missed again. Kawhi Leonard got an open chance at mid-range, but the basketball hit the rim straight with a bang. Bounced out. I didn't make it again. The Heat got the chance to continue to expand the points difference. Could it be that the Heat will give us a surprise in the first game of this finals? Kenny Smith asked with interest, and Charles Barkley touched the side. Touched his chin, then said, there may be surprises, but San Antonio still has a chance to come back. Their bench is better, and everything is still unknown. Barkley mentioned the bench, and Kenny Smith realized that the Spurs' strongest is not a starter, but a bench. The Spurs game always has the phenomenon of digging in the starting line and burying the pit in the bench, but the pit digging in the starting line of the Spurs in this game is too big. Leonard missed the shot and the Heat once again seized the opportunity. James broke through to attract the defense. After the ball went out, Chris Bosh took the ball and shot it. With a scream, it was another three-pointer. 14:4. The Spurs are facing a crash. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 323. At 14:4, Popovich finally couldn't help it, and called a timeout with a beep. Paused, and 11 cast a scorching look, but Popovich frowned, and quickly made adjustments and substitutions, only to replace Manu Ginobili. And 11 still failed to play, which disappointed an 11, but Popovich's adjustment did not have any major problems. The offense is a mess, not to mention the defense. Now that the Spurs are replaced by Manu Ginobili, they obviously want to stabilize their offense first. Yes, with Manu's appearance, the Spurs' offense should be able to recover, but how about defense? Without defense, how can I catch up with the 10-point difference? If Angzi could hear Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley's commentary, he would definitely nod his head. Of course, Popovich's idea is the safest. It would be okay to replace Angzi to strengthen the defense, but who can guarantee that Angzi's defense will be better than Leonard? Therefore, Angzi continues to wait on the bench for a chance to play. After Manu Ginobili came on the court, the Spurs' offense did improve, but the defense still couldn't prevent the repeated impact of the Heat's big three. More than 6 minutes into the first quarter, LeBron James and Wade have combined to score 18 points, plus the other players 9 points, scoring a total of 27 points, while the Spurs have only 15 points, which is already 12 points behind. Separated. Yanwei was unstoppable, and Popovich called for the second timeout of the game. And, you go on the court, replace Kahi, Danny, you go on the court and replace Tony, Manu, you go to the point guard, and, go to defend LeBron James. Angzi stood up immediately, and finally it was his turn to play. The Spurs' offensive problems have been half resolved until now, and the defense is still a mess, but fortunately, the score difference is only 12 points. Angzi played, the Spurs trailed by 12 points in the first quarter. The situation is not optimistic. I don't know if Angzi's appearance can bring good changes to the Spurs. Director John watched Angzi stand on the court, and said with some expectation. The Spurs do need to change, but after switching to Angzi, Angzi's main task should be defense, because Angzi needs to match LeBron James. Ujiah said quite rationally, and John nodded. I know, Ujiah's statement makes more sense. Huh, I'm finally out, the finals, I'm here, I conquer, Angzi muttered this classic line silently, and then silently stood at a 45-degree angle in the front court, and LeBron James stuck behind Angzi. In the back court, Manu Ginobili received the ball from split and began to move towards the front court. Kenny Smith saw Manu Ginobili as the point guard and couldn't help but said, Greg Popovich actually let Manu Ginobili as the point guard, and then replaced Danny Green. Obviously this one move is to strengthen the defense, but such a substitution will not make the offense stiff again. In the words, it is not optimistic about the Spurs. Charles Barkley also shook his head and said, indeed, after Tony Parker left the field, on paper, the Spurs' offense dropped slightly. Both Turner Sports commentators were not optimistic about Popovich's substitution, and Angzi's first ball on the court, he passed a running position to throw away James and received the basketball. Of course, it was just running to catch the ball, and James followed afterwards. Seeing James rushing over, an 11 didn't hide, but directly stuck to James and began to cut in. Danny Green, who was cruising on the inside line, saw Angzi cut in, and he began to withdraw from the bottom corner. As soon as James saw Danny Green withdraw from the bottom corner and crossed behind Angzi, he raised his hand for the ball. So he immediately got stuck in Angzi, interfered with Angzi's basketball with his hands, and prevented Angzi from passing the ball. Angzi discovered James' thoughts. James actually thought he was going to pass the ball. This made Angzi laugh in his heart. He turned around and made a fake move that he was about to pass the ball. James hurriedly took a step from behind Angzi towards the front, and then reached out to cut off the ball in Angzi's hand. Angzi directly turned sideways, straddling his left foot forward, and then jumped up. An 11 is going to pass the ball. No. It's not a pass. It's a dunk. Kenny Smith was still commenting on the game a second before. He also thought an 11 was going to pass the ball, but an 11 turned sideways. There was a dunk with a cry. LeBron James was a little caught off guard, as did the fans at the scene. They were stunned for a second, and then they burst into amazing cheers. This ball is so beautiful. Angzi actually played LeBron James. Even if the Heat are now leading, this ball is a shame for LeBron. Charles Barkley laughed. He usually likes watching superstars the most. It's a joke. When James slumped, Barkley naturally seemed very happy. An 11's dunk is indeed very beautiful, mainly because of a series of actions before the dunk, which is very smart. When he returned to the defense, Duncan stepped up and made a touch of an 11. An 11 smiled and avoided. The point difference has shrunk to 10 points. Let's see if the Spurs can prevent the Heat from attacking. LeBron James personally pushed the ball to the front court, and Angzi directly posted it. In this game, James had an outside touch. This was clear when Angzi sat on the court. James single-handed the ball to protect the ball behind him, and then suddenly began to play back, one after another. The effect is not very good. James seems to have a high regard for his back skills. The effect of the back hit was mediocre, so James quickly turned around, and then squeezed into the three-point line against Angzi. Angzi stretched his arms and wrapped his arms around James like brown candy. James dashed 2 steps towards the inside line. He suddenly made a loud noise. There was a sound of sneakers rubbing against the floor on the floor. James suddenly retreated and avoided Angzi. The defense, a long shot 2 points directly out. Angzi couldn't interfere, but James also failed to score the ball, and slammed directly on the backboard with a bang. Although James's long shot has been a little bit, it has not yet reached the point where every goal can be scored. The goal was not scored, and Angzi just called out a fluke in his heart. After all, he was swayed by James on this goal, and he couldn't prevent it at all. James missed a long shot. Duncan protected the rebound, and then handed the ball to Manu Ginobili. Ginobili rushed to the front court and directly stopped a jumper, but unfortunately he didn't make it. The Heat's counter-attack came soon. After grabbing the rebound, it was Yanwei's connection. James passed the ball, and Wade dunked in the front court and scored 2 points. The dunk that Angzi played on the court, and the 2 points he got were cancelled out. An 11 frowned. He felt that if this went on, the 12-point difference wanted to be reduced in a short time, so an 11 voluntarily ran to the backcourt and asked for the ball. Duncan, who served the ball, froze for a moment. Angzi seemed to have never asked for the ball in the backcourt. However, Manu Ginobili gave up the position when he saw it. He felt that Angzi must have a reason for asking for the ball, so he moved away. So, gave the opportunity to Angzi. Duncan served to Angzi directly from the backcourt. This rare scene attracted the attention of Kizhu Zhang and Yuchia. More importantly, after Angzi got the ball, he pulled up his legs directly, sprinted towards the front court and rushed towards the front court. Angzi directly took the ball by himself and ran towards the front court. After halftime, Angzi still didn't mean to stop, still speeding up. If the humanoid tank was like a tank, it rushed towards James. James was waiting for Angzi from outside the three-point line, but when he saw Angzi rushing towards him, James involuntarily took a step back. What is he going to do? Is it a direct breakthrough? Chong chong chong. Angzi's speed is like lightning. Rushing to a position 2 steps beyond the three-point line, Angzi found that James had stepped back several steps and was already waiting for him 2 or 3 steps beyond the free throw line. However, when Angzi rushed to a position 1 step beyond the three-point line, he went straight. Stopped. Then he jumped up gently. Suddenly, the whole arena was quiet. Kenny Smith was stunned, then shouted, "Not a breakthrough. This is an emergency stop jumper from outside the three-point line." Angzi leaped high. In front of him, LeBron James rushed towards Angzi in horror, but it was already too late. With a scream, a three-pointer crossed the nets, with a burst of white spray. With a bang, the ATT arena burst into a huge cheer. "Come in." Angzi played LeBron James on IQ again. Charles Barkley was still smiling. On the field, Angzi clenched his fist, and stretched out to add oil to herself. On a three-pointer, the Spurs reduced the difference to 9 points. Then, after defending the Heat's next wave of offense, the Spurs who held the ball turned into Manu Ginobili. Angzi opened his hand at the bottom corner to ask for the ball. He knew he was in a hot state, so he took the initiative to ask for it. But Ginobili found a better opportunity through a breakthrough. Split, who ran out of the middle distance, directly received a pass from Ginobili, a jumper, and missed it. There was an exclamation in the ATT arena, and they held their heads in annoyance. Thiago Split CIC actually didn't make it, and the Heat once again ushered in an opportunity to widen their points difference. The Heat got the opportunity to widen the point gap, and they did not miss this opportunity. James held the ball and broke through to the front court, and then made a direct shot. Wade cut to the mid-range, received the ball and shot, and made a scream. Wade hit the ball and made it, and the point difference returned to 11 points, with 1.5 minutes left in the first quarter. Yes, after the timeout, the Spurs only relied on Angzi to get 5 points, while the Heat had 2 assists from James. Wade scored 4 points, and the point difference was only reduced by 1 point. Although it is 1 point, it is already for the Spurs. That's good news, because at least they have narrowed the difference. With the Spurs offense, Angzi once again asked for the ball. Facing James' defense on the outside line, he put on a singles posture. On the sidelines, Popovich frowned. He wanted to shout and let Angzi play according to the tactics. However, thinking that Angzi scored 5 points in a row, he hesitated and stopped. Angzi moved quickly, and he accelerated, squeezing James directly towards the inside line. Then rushed to the inside and shouted, Angzi directly against James' defense, abruptly put the basketball into the basket. It also caused a foul by James. The cheers of the ATT arena sounded again. Angzi scored 2 points and an additional penalty. The scorer in 11 waved his hand fiercely, and then high-fived the teammates who walked up. James's complexion is not very good. After being forced to eat a few goals by Angzi, his defensive performance is simply terrible. The emergence of this situation is really too bad for James. Stepping onto the free throw line, the ATT arena instantly became quiet. Angzi took a deep breath, and then steadily hit the free throw. There was a burst of cheers from the sidelines. Angzi scored a free throw, 2-1. The point gap narrowed again, with 8 points left. Angzi scored 8 points in a row after playing. He seems to be in a very good state today. On the Heat side, Wade once again scored 2 points with a sudden stop jumper, a very short point. Then, Angzi, who was in hot form, continued to take the ball on the offensive end, with a 10-point gap. Angzi felt that he should strike while he was hot. Taking advantage of his excellent state, continued to take the ball and then against LeBron James in the front court, directly a 3-point jumper. Swish, boom. The ATT arena broke out directly, and the cheers almost overturned the roof of the arena. The Spurs are chasing points. The Spurs are chasing points. Angzi's personal 11th point. The Spurs narrowed the score again, with 8 points left. 11 points in a single quarter. Angzi is super god. There are only 8 points left, Kenny Smith shouted generously and forcefully. Charles Barkley on the side retorted him mercilessly, "You are wrong, Kenny, it was 11 points in 3 minutes, and Angzi scored 11 points in 3 minutes. He has risen." Kenny Smith was a bit speechless. On the field, the first quarter had come to an end, and the two teams had another offense. LeBron James directly asked for the ball, gestured, and opened the singles. James broke through with the ball, still no change, directly against Angzi, squeezed toward the inside. Squeezing to the inside, an 11 directly opened his arms and tried his best to withstand James. James also received the ball directly and turned his back to Angzi. James didn't want to play hard just like this. The success rate of strong play is bound to be low, so James decided to find a way to shake Angzi. The last goal of the first quarter was reduced to 5 points. James should not allow it. Lost. Next to Angzi, James turned half a circle flexibly, and Angzi immediately turned sideways and reached out to make up for it. However, James seemed to have found an opportunity. After turning half a circle, he squeezed Angzi directly, raising his hand to send the basketball into the hoop. Everyone is holding their breath. This ball is very important. If Angzi defends the ball, they can enter the second quarter with an 8-point difference, and put it in the second quarter with an 8-point difference. It's not too much to fall behind, and it can be recovered in 2 or 3 rounds. Popovich hugged his chest and stared at Angzi and James tightly. The first few goals Angzi scored in this game gave Popovich an urge to call a timeout and severely reprimand Angzi to make Angzi clear the importance of passing. But when Angzi started scoring all sorts of goals, Popovich resisted it, tying the points difference is the most important thing. Popovich is not the kind of old stubbornness. He knows that no matter what way it is, the way to win it's a good way. On the court, James squeezed Angzi and raised his hands to the basket. "James, it's going to be a layup, the point difference is going to be widened to 7 points." At that moment, it seemed that everyone could hear the noise on the court, not the crisp sound of basketball and the hoop colliding, nor the soft sound of basketball entering and exiting the hoop, but a sudden muffled sound. The ATT arena exclaimed, because Angzi jumped up sideways, how why he leaned, stretched his arms, and went directly toward the basketball cover. With a bang, this muffled sound was like a prelude to cheering, which directly triggered the whistling and tsunami of the ATT arena. Angzi. Super hot pot. It's incredible. Fantastic big hat, Angzi, he did it. Director Yujia and Director Zhang stood up in surprise, and Angzi actually took advantage of his superhuman bounce and directly missed a goal that James was bound to win. On the court, Angzi was excited and had a chest bump with Splitter, while LeBron James had a sullen face and retreated to the bottom line to serve. Angzi's big hat directly flew the basketball, flying out of the bottom line. But fortunately, the Heat's offensive time is not much, only 5 seconds left, and only 18 seconds left from the end of the first quarter. The Heat's time is running out. They delivered the ball quickly. Wade dribbled the ball for 2 steps and jumped directly, and bang hit the iron. The Spurs protected the rebound. With more than 12 seconds left in the game, Ginobili quickly took the ball to the front court, then Angzi took the ball again. In the last 7 or 8 seconds, if the Spurs can score this goal, they can narrow the point difference again. Therefore, basketball has given Angzi, who feels the best and is in the best state. The timer has already sounded the countdown beep. Angzi has waited for 2 seconds, and in the last 3 seconds, he directly confronted LeBron James's defense. 3 points. Angzi shot directly against James' defense. There was a hum, the timer buzzed, and the basketball was still flying. Although it was just a buzzer in the first quarter, almost all the fans on the sidelines were still standing. Can this goal be scored? Huh. The crisp sound made the ATT arena boil again. Angzi's buzzer has 3 points, it's in, it's in. The point difference is only 5 points, and the point difference is only 5 points. The Spurs performed a magical, no. It should be said that Angzi performed a magical. No one thought, Angzi. The best sixth man in the regular season, less than 4 minutes off the bench, consecutive hits. Scored 14 points. They actually directly in the first quarter, he recovered 7 of the 12 points behind. Angzi scored 14 points in 4 minutes. This is the only contributor to the Spurs' recovery. Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith summarized the first quarter of the game. The first half of the first quarter was the performance moment of the Heat duo. But in the last 4 minutes, it was Angzi's performance alone, scoring 14 points in a row. Brown James, the Spurs, under Angzi's magical play, directly chased points to 5 points. Kenny Smith finally said, Angzi was born, maybe the Miamians should find a way to restrict Angzi in the second quarter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 325. Remember all novels network in 1 second, all novels for free. The Miami people are indeed deploying tactics to limit Angzi. The Heat do not have full-time outside single defense players, and Shane Battier counts as one. So David Fizdale thought about it and said directly, LeBron, you come on the field and play at the 4th position, Norris, Cole, Ray, Allen, you partner with the back line, Sean, Battier, you play in the 4th position to prevent the death of N, so that he can no longer score, Chris, Anderson, you play in the 5th position, pay attention to the protection of the rebounds. Well, lads. Get on the court, crush them. David Fizdale stood up, then waved vigorously. Crush them. The 5 Heat came on the court and shouted with everyone, and then they went on the court. Before the start of the second quarter, on the Spurs side, Vici just finished the intercession interview, and then quickly walked back to his position. He clapped his hands directly and said, we need to continue to chase points in the second quarter, so I decided to fine-tune the lineup in the second quarter. Patrick, you replaced Manu and played the point guard position. Tracy, you play the shooting guard position, and, you continue to play your 3rd position. Tim, you continue to play this quarter, there is no problem, right? No problem, Greg. Tim Duncan nodded, and Vici felt relieved. Then he continued, the 4th position, Boris, you come to fight. Okay. Boris Dior also nodded. Vici paused again. He didn't finish, in the second quarter, and, you are in good form. You can play a little more offensively. Tracy, the rhythm and the ball in the second quarter are up to you. Up. Angzi and McGrady nodded at the same time. Angzi was excited, and McGrady was the same. The reason for their excitement was the same. Angzi was because he received a rare offensive task, and McGrady, he hadn't played in the second quarter for a long time. Vici let him play in the second quarter, but also let him master the rhythm and the ball. Obviously there is the meaning of reusing him in the finals. The second quarter began, the Spurs are still 5 points behind, and the first shot in the second quarter is also in the hands of the Heat. LeBron James broke through Angzi hard with the ball. He directly rushed into the inside under the pressure of Angzi, and then came back to pass the ball against Angzi. Ray Allen quickly went around and threw away McGrady. He received the ball and made a direct shot, and he hit it with a scream. The matchup between the veteran and the veteran was ultimately won by Ray Allen, who was in better shape. With a 7-point difference, Angzi, who was guaranteed shot rights, was no longer in a hurry, ran all the way to the front court, and then waited for Tracy McGrady to control the ball to the front court. McGrady and Mills in the front court made a cross run, and the ball changed hands. Mills tried to break through the ball, but was directly blocked by Norris Cole. At this time, Angzi circled out from the inside and took it directly. After basketball, Sean Battier entangled Angzi, but Angzi speeded up and galloped past Sean Battier. Shane Battier is also old, no longer the outside gate of the Houston Rockets back then. An 11's breakthrough directly shook off Battier, and Battier could only follow an 11 and follow in vain. An 11 rushed into the inside, and dodged Chris Anderson's defense in one step, then made a light leap, and made a snap button with a bang. The intensity was not great, so there was only a burst of cheers from the sidelines. The point difference is still 5 points, but in the eyes of Kenny Smith, Angzi's score is more than 2 points. Angzi dunks. Obviously, a Sean Battier can't restrain Angzi in a fiery state. This scoring means in the second quarter, Angzi can still easily score over the Heat. On the front court, Angzi once again faced James. James broke through the last goal. James still played the same way. Against Angzi's defense, he rushed toward the inside line like a tank. Rushing to the inside, James chose to come by himself. He turned around to make a layup, but Angzi hesitated and did not reach out, because he judged that the layup was likely to be a fake move, because even James could not be so big. Just lay up directly in front of Angzi. Sure enough, after James made a fake layup, he collected the ball directly, then turned from the other side, and shot directly with a hook. The ball was predicted by Angzi, but the hook was really not very defensive, so Angzi had tried his best to interfere, but the ball was still scored. James's close-range hook shot was still very high. After scoring the goal, LeBron James glanced at Angzi coldly. In the first quarter, he suffered from Angzi's pain. Now, with 2 consecutive goals in the second quarter, he finally scored some back. The Spurs served in the back court, and this time the ball became Mills. He held the ball and ran directly towards the front court. Norris Cole retreated quickly. But rushing to the front court, Mills stopped one step, and then began to pass the ball. He passed directly to Tracy McGrady on the left 45 degrees. After Tracy McGrady received the ball, he made a breakthrough, attracted the defense, and scored again. McGrady passed the ball again, and an open was passed directly, and Angzi at the bottom corner received the ball, which was an open position. However, the Heat's defense was very quick originally. Shane Battier was not far from Angzi, and James in the low position also rushed over. The two directly began to pinch Angzi, raised their hands, and wanted to take Angzi. Lock in this position at the bottom corner. An 11 struggled for a while. This position was indeed not good for passing the ball. An 11 quickly held the ball in his arms, then lowered his head and swept it, and found an opportunity directly. Tracy McGrady rushed over from a 45-degree angle. Angzi directly gave James a pass through the crotch. Tracy McGrady received the basketball with difficulty, but at this time, the Heat's defense was already broken. Tracy received the ball. After that, 3 steps were taken directly and the layup was successful. 2 points were accounted for. Angzi broke free and was still pinching James and Battier, and had a chest bump with McGrady to celebrate. The points difference remains the same, but for the Spurs, the rhythm of the second quarter is what they like to see. The Heat's offense, James continues to take the ball. The Heat's bench is extremely lack of personal offense, so James still comes by himself. He is still facing Angzi's defense. This time, Angzi decided to make some changes on the defensive end. The 5-point gap has not been reduced. Angzi can't stand it anymore. If you want to narrow the gap, the first step is to defend. However, James only took the ball in the high post, and then quickly scored it. Ray Allen started running. He rounded the top of the arc and took the basketball. Chris Anderson was at a 45-degree angle. A pick and roll was given to Ray Allen, and then McGrady was blocked firmly. Ray Allen, who took a step away from McGrady, made a jumper directly, and with a scream, the Heat scored again. Angzi sighed. He looked at the scoreboard above his head. 5 points, 7 points, the score difference changes back and forth like this, but it will not shrink. It seems that he has to work harder. To be continued. Mobile version of Quanben Novel Network. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 326. McGrady continued to hold the ball. Angzi circled the bottom line, circled out, and then received a pass from McGrady. Angzi took the ball at the top of the arc. LeBron James stared with thick eyebrows and big eyes, as well as the high hairline on that end. Directly in front of Angzi, the Heat changed defense. Shane Battier was unfavorable in defending Angzi. He always missed and was crushed by Angzi at an absolute speed. Sooner or later, the Heat would be killed by Angzi alone, so David Fizdale decisively adjusted his defense on the sidelines. Let Sean Battier top the fourth position, let James return to the third position and defend Angzi. Angzi controlled the ball from the outside line, and the offense was somewhat stagnant. McGrady also circled the inside line and wanted to catch the ball. An 11 made a fake pass directly. James moved a little. An 11 immediately took the ball back, and then took a step with his left foot, and his right foot was about to keep up. James, who had been shaken by Angzi, immediately chose to take a step back, but at this time, Angzi directly chose to retract his left foot, and by the way, he took another step back with his right foot, one step away from the three-point line, and then jumped up. LeBron James's right leg was still within the three-point line, and his left leg hurriedly stepped out. The whole person has lost his center of gravity and can't jump. He can only watch Angzi's three-point shot. Swish. Angzi's three-point long shot, in, as Kenny Smith yelled, the ATT arena burst into huge cheers. A three-pointer hit, and the point difference was reduced to 4 points. Charles Barkley summed up the point difference, and the Spurs fans on the sidelines began to shout defensively. "SE! SE!" Defense has become the key. Angzi's three-pointer gave the Spurs a chance to quickly narrow the point difference, but defending the Heat's goal is now the top priority. With the Heat's offense, LeBron James ran to the front court early, and then got a better position in the high post, with Angzi stuck behind him. LeBron James subconsciously glanced at the scoreboard above the arena. There was 4 points left. He frowned. An 11 behind him naturally noticed this. An 11 gave a secret laugh. He was able to guess James's next step. Next, what James must do is definitely to get the ball, and then singles himself, in this crucial second quarter, scoring. Norris Cole held the ball to the front court, and James directly reached out for the ball. After getting the ball, James began to try to turn around. His backing skills are not so good. He usually hits and his hit rate is not very high. This ball is for the Heat to hit the success rate. If you don't score, then it's bad. The difference will be further narrowed by the Spurs, so James decided to turn around and attack. The big foot stretched forward and took a probing step to test Angzi's defensive center of gravity. Then he turned around and slapped the basketball twice on the floor. James rushed into the penalty area against Angzi. The Bawang stepped out and took 3 steps directly, holding the ball in both hands, and sending the basketball to the top of the hoop. "The layup is coming!" ATT Arena exclaimed. At this time, Angzi's big hand suddenly appeared and swept over the hoop. The basketball hit the backboard quickly and then bounced off. Angzi's big hat. No interference with the ball. The basketball flew out. Charles Barkley shouted. The basketball flew straight out, and Mills on the outside slid to the free throw line flexibly, and then swept the bounced basketball. Patrick Mills got the basketball. "Are the Spurs going fast?" Kenny Smith asked, and the Spurs quickly gave the answer. Mills, who grabbed the basketball, turned around and launched a fast break. He would not let go of such a good opportunity. Rushing to the front court, a light layup, the cheers of the ATT Arena have reached the highest tide, 2 points. Only the last 2 points are left. Go Spurs go! Go Spurs go! After the continuous pursuit of points, the ATT Arena sounded a neat slogan. Spurs rush! Spurs rush! The slogans are neat and uniform, and the momentum goes straight to the sky. The Spurs played their momentum, and the fans on the sidelines created a crazy atmosphere. "Maybe Miami should call a timeout at this time." Kenny Smith just finished speaking. David Fisdall ran to the sidelines and called a timeout. It should indeed be called a timeout. Angzi's three-pointers, blocked shots, Mills' fast break, and this series of offenses and defenses, the Spurs are already in full swing. If the timeout is not called in time, then the remaining 2-point advantage is also very good. Nothing exists. David Fisdall quickly made adjustments. His adjustments were very simple. He replaced Chris Bosh, who had not been resting for a long time, and replaced Sean Battier. The Spurs also made adjustments. When the Heat replaced Bosh, they replaced Tim Duncan with Aaron Baines. "Aaron, you go on the field," and replaced him. "If Chris Bosh is on the field, you will stand firm against him. If he doesn't play, you will protect the rim. When LeBron James breaks through, you go forward and defend. Don't be afraid of missing people." After 12 points in the first quarter, only the last 2 points are left. Now Vici still has a clear idea. Duncan has played too long and needs a rest. Going to Aaron Baines can maintain the hardness of the inside line. As for the inside attack, depends only on Angzi's current state, and it is completely unnecessary. The timeout ended soon. With the players of the two teams coming on again, the ATT Arena again cheered, and then the "Go Spurs Go" slogan sounded in unison. After coming back from the timeout, the Heat still held the ball with LeBron James, but Angzi's defense against James was tight enough, and Vici added Aaron Baines's double teaming against James, so James couldn't find a good one for a while. Chances are, after a person breaks through the inside line, he is double teamed by Aaron Baines. In the end, the only choice was to split the ball. Bosh from the outside line took the ball and shot. Facing Boris Diaw's defense, he made a scream. The point difference returned to 4 points, but next was the Spurs' possession of the ball. McGrady took possession of the ball and advanced to the front court. The front court Spurs began to run wildly. It is likely to be a goal that continues to narrow the point difference. For the San Antonio Spurs, this goal is very important. See how Tracy McGrady will play this goal. In the front court, Angzi started running without the ball directly from the bottom corner. James followed him closely. Angzi was planning to go around the top of the arc, and then directly take the ball to single James, but think about it, he always singles this trick. The moves will be old. As of now, Angzi has used a few tricks, basically retreat jumpers, emergency stop jumpers and so on. Backup singles are not very useful, but Angzi knows that after using it a few times, the Heat he must be guarded strictly. Angzi now has a hole card in his hand. The hole card is a fallback jumper. A breakthrough is not counted because when Angzi held the ball in singles, he has been breaking through. It can be said that Angzi's breakthrough and progress have been seen by many people. In the eyes of him, Angzi caught them off guard with a breakthrough in these opening shots. But now, Angzi's best offensive offense has never been useful. An 11 quickly changed direction. He went around from the bottom line, then went straight from the bottom corner of the other side to a 45-degree angle, pulling James behind him and running together. James was also very fast. He followed Angzi with small steps, but when he reached a 45-degree angle, he bumped into a wall, and he ran into the warrior Alumbe, who stood up to help Angzi pick and roll cover. NC, the three-point line suddenly turned on their backs, but an 11 took advantage of this opportunity to rush to the top of the arc. On the other side, Tracy McGrady made a soft pass, Angzi took the ball and shot it, but Chris Anderson could not defend. Swish, boom. The ATT arena burst into cheers again. 3 points. Still Angzi. A three-pointer. The Spurs are behind with only 1 point left. Only 1 point left, Kenny Smith shouted excitedly. Unbelievable, an 11. He broke out suddenly. Before he came on the field, the Spurs were 12 points behind. The offensive and defensive Spurs completely collapsed. After Angzi came on the field, they chased consecutive points, 14 points in the first quarter, and hit the present in the second quarter. He gets another 8 points. The shouts of "Go Spurs Go" on the sidelines were endless. At this moment, the shouts of Angzi also appeared. On the field, Angzi was like a calm killer, but quietly clenched his fist and raised his hand, and then returned to defense. The cheers and shouts in the ear did not affect Angzi. In the final 1 point, Angzi was calm. Terrible. To be continued. Mobile version of Kwanban Novel Network.